They were smiling at me. I was still a university student in Hungary when it happened. It was December, and the winter break had just started, so I wanted to return to my family in Transylvania. I spent the first day packing up my things, and wasn't planning on returning until January. The following morning, I started the car and left the city. The snow was heavy. It was hard to see anything except the road and the light of other cars. I followed the GPS until I crossed the border, when it suddenly stopped working, so I had to use my map. It started to get dark. The weather conditions were really bad, and I could barely see the road in front of my car. I looked at my map. A big city called Cluj should have been close, but I wasn't exactly sure where I was, and the GPS was still dead. My home was still 4 hours away, but with the worsening weather conditions, it looked like it'd be a lot longer. I called my mother. She told me to find a place to stay in any village or city that I could find, or in the worst case, just find a parking lot and sleep in the car. I drove a few more minutes, hoping that I could find Cluj or another city. After a while, I found an old-looking village. It wasn't big, because it looked to have around 20 houses. I stopped my car at the edge of the road, then took my keys, phone, and wallet with me. It was around 9 p.m. All of the houses were old and small. A lot of the houses had their windows barricaded. There weren't any street lights, so I had to use my phone to illuminate the empty streets. I was sure there wasn't a hotel there, so I should have just gone back to my car and slept there. But then I noticed someone. It was an old man. I wanted to ask him if he could help me, but as I pointed my phone at him and saw his face, I stepped back a little. His eyes were black and wide open. He had a disturbing, broad smile. His skin was pale like an albino. He was bald, with an unorganized beard. He was looking straight at me, then started to approach. I noticed that my left leg was shaking, so I tried to calm down. Come on, man. It's just an old man. He can't hurt me. Don't be stupid. As he got closer, I could feel my heart in my chest. His arms and fingers were abnormally long, like he could reach his ankles. He started giggling like he was crazy. Hi, I greeted him, trying to be kind. I would like to stay here for the night. Do you know of any hotels nearby? He's probably drunk, I thought. I noticed that my hands were shaking too. I took a deep breath. I can help, he responded, still giggling. His wide smile still hadn't disappeared from his face. His strange black eyes creeped me out. You can sleep there. He pointed at another wooden house. Its windows were barricaded too, except the one he was pointing at. I wasn't sure that I wanted to stay there. Is it yours? I asked. Nobody lives there. You can sleep in the attic. There's a bed up there. Thank you. Before I could say anything else, he let out a loud laugh, then ran away. But the way he did it left me frightened. He stood on all fours, then ran like some kind of cat, using his hands and legs too. I just stood there for a minute, frozen from fear, and also because of the cold weather. I considered going back to my car and leaving this village behind, but it was already dark, and the weather was getting worse by the minute, so I walked toward the house the old man had shown me. It looked ancient, like nobody had lived there for decades. I hoped this was the case, because I didn't want to meet any more people if I didn't have to. As I approached the building, I saw another one in its neighborhood, whose windows weren't barricaded. I saw a little girl in the window, who was around 7. She had the same black eyes as the old man, along with the disturbing, huge smile on her face. She waved at me. A chill ran through my spine. I ran through the fence to go inside the house. I opened the door. It was so loud it scared me. I went inside and found exactly what I had expected. An old, abandoned kitchen full of spider webs. There was a table and a few chairs, but all in terrible condition. I walked up the stairs to the attic. The old man was right. There was a bed, which was also at least 100 years old. I laid down on the bed. There was also a window on my left side, so I could see the streets. I looked up. There was a large spider web a few feet above me, with a huge spider crawling along its old home. I looked at the corner of the attic and saw an old wardrobe. I just couldn't fall asleep. I felt unsafe. I laid there for an hour, then heard a loud scream coming from the streets. I jumped out of my bed, scared. I slowly looked out the window and saw a man with black hair. He screamed again, and again, and again. He took a deep breath, then screamed again, like a madman. I checked my phone to see what time it was, and he probably saw the light through the window. The guy looked at me from the streets. He had the same dang eyes as the old man and the little girl, smiling madly. He then screamed again, straight at me. It was a loud scream, like someone was torturing him, but he didn't have any visible injuries. It was just crazy. He then ran towards the door of the house I was in and went inside. I remembered that the door wasn't locked when I arrived, and I didn't close it after I went in either. The blood froze in my body. There was a crazy man in the same house as me. I quickly ran towards the attic's trap door and locked it. Immediately after, he started hitting the trap door from below, trying to open it. I quietly walked towards the closet in the corner, hiding in it. It wasn't comfortable and was full of spiderwebs and spiders. I heard the man trying to get in, and finally heard a loud bang. I immediately knew that the man had opened the trap door, and he was now in the attic with me. I just hoped that he couldn't find me in the closet. I heard him walking through the attic. Then I felt a spider crawling on my neck. I always hated spiders, and bugs in general. I could feel its tiny legs moving on my skin, and I couldn't do anything, because the man would have heard me. A few minutes later, everything went silent. I couldn't hear the man walking around anymore. I hoped that he had just left the house. I felt more and more spiders on me as time passed, and it started to annoy me. I decided to wait a little bit more. The man could have been there still, waiting for me, but I couldn't just stay in that wardrobe forever. My legs started to get tired, and I was sleepy. I decided to come out. I opened the closet doors, and at that moment, my worst fear came true. The man was standing in front of me with his dang black eyes and smile. He screamed in my face with the same terrifying voice. I almost fainted and felt like I was about to die. The man jumped at me, pushing me back into the wardrobe. I hit my head there. My survival instincts kicked in, and I quickly stood up and ran towards the unlocked trapdoor, then jumped down to the kitchen as fast as I could. I ran out of the house, shutting the door behind me. It was strange. I didn't hear the man running after me. I decided to go back to my car and leave this village. The weather had improved, even though it was still snowing. I looked at the house's window where I tried to sleep, and there was the man, still smiling at me. I quickly turned away, running towards my car, but then I stopped and looked around. I couldn't remember where my car was. The village seemed like it had changed. It wasn't the same as before. The houses seemed bigger, and I saw a temple at the end of the street, which I didn't remember seeing when I had first arrived. A few houses away, I saw the little girl I saw earlier, singing some innocent kid song, but it was still terrifying. Then she turned towards me and screamed. I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. I turned back and saw the old man, the one who showed me the house. He ran towards me on all fours, like I saw him running away a few hours before. I didn't know what to feel. It was just too surreal. I was, and still am, an atheist, but I hoped that there was a God who would have saved me. I ran, trying to reach the edge of the village, hoping I could find my car there. I ran, not looking back, but knowing that the old man was still chasing me, because I could hear him running. I had never run so fast in my entire life, but still, I couldn't see the edge of the village. I was so tired that I just fell on my knees after about a minute. I looked back and saw the old man behind me. I knew that I was about to die, but then I looked around and finally recognized where I was. I saw the house where I was trying to sleep, then saw my car exactly where I had left it. I couldn't understand how it happened. I was running in a straight line from the house and arrived at the same place, but it wasn't actually the same place. I had no time to think. I used my remaining energy to stand up and run back to my car. I quickly sat behind the wheel and then started the engine. I pressed the throttle pedal with as much force as I could. I turned back to the main road, then looked back at the village. There was nothing there, just a forest. I was shocked. There wasn't even a road there, even though I came from that direction. It was like the village had vanished with the old man. I felt like I was about to faint again. I looked back to the back seat and there was a water bottle. I took a moment and drank all of the water that was in it. When I finally calmed down, I started driving. About 20 minutes later, I found Cluj and a hotel to sleep at. The following day, I arrived home and told everything to my parents. They had no idea what happened. At first, they didn't even want to believe me. But then I showed them the scar on my head, which I got when the crazy man attacked me by throwing me into the wardrobe. A few weeks later, I drove back to Hungary on the same road. I've never seen that village again. I still have nightmares from that night. I have no idea what happened that day. I wasn't drunk and I wasn't under the influence of any drugs. My brain tries to tell me that I was just hallucinating. The memories seem distant. I know it happened and everything was real. I know. The Boy in the Bag. When I was a kid, I decided to run away from home. My mom was divorced and worked long hours. Frustrated and lonely, I walked out the door with nothing but the clothes on my back. It was only when the sun started setting and the shadows grew more warped that I realized that nothing around me looked familiar. Chest heaving, I felt my panic building up as tears welled up in my eyes. Then I saw him. He was sitting on a park bench illuminated by a street lamp. He couldn't have been older than me. He was wayfish, dressed in dark colors, while a black duffel bag was nestled at his feet. Feeling an odd sense of kinship, I called out, Did you run away too?" Not replying, he moved his hands to clutch the handles of the duffel bag tightly. Getting a closer look at him, my first thought was that he looked angry, and that he had been crying. His pale face was fixed in a firm scowl, while matted strands of hair fell over his bloodshot eyes. Glancing at the battered duffel bag, I couldn't help but feel bad for him. I ran away, but I knew that my mom would find me in the end. It wasn't like I would be gone forever. But this little boy looked like he had planned to leave permanently, and has been lost for a long time since then. Seeing his defensiveness, I continued, "I won't take your bag or anything. We can just be friends, you know." He jerked his head towards me, a scowl still etched on his gaunt face. He gazed at me as if he was trying to pierce holes through my soul. Uncomfortable, I wrung my hands and continued to talk. I told him about my family, and about how we used to be happy. Suddenly, one of the boy's hands had latched onto my wrists. His eyes were sweeping from left to right, as if he was scanning for something or someone in the darkness. His grip was tight, so tight that his nails drew blood. Despite my protests, he yanked me off the bench and ran, dragging me along. When I broke free, I punched him in the face. "Go away," I shrieked. "I don't want to be friends with you anymore." I'll never forget his expression when I left him crumpled on the ground, but I could never pinpoint what it meant. Was it sadness? Pleading? Longing? I eventually found my way towards the police station. Within an hour, my mom had arrived to pick me up. She was sobbing and shaking while she hugged me, though I didn't understand until I saw the news. An escaped convict had been on the run, and the police found him near the park I was in. Lucky kid, people told me, but there's one detail of the case that still haunts me to this day. His last victim was a boy whose remains were stuffed into a black duffel bag. I was born to be sacrificed by my own parents. You'll be sacrificed to the Supreme God when you are old enough. That was what my parents always told me ever since I was around 5. That's the only reason you exist, they kept repeating. And learn, because the Supreme God prefers educated victims. It was horrible growing up like this. I always knew something was wrong with our family. My parents held family meetings every month when they invited a few dozen people over to our home, and they all went to the basement. One time I asked my father what they were doing. He said that they were showing respect to the one true God, and that I will understand it as soon as I was to be sacrificed, when I reached the age of 15. Aside from my bedroom, I remember a smaller room alongside the kitchen. I wasn't allowed to go inside, and it was always locked. Its door had a black window, so it was impossible to see through. My usual routine while staying there was getting back from school and spending the rest of the day learning, locked in my room. My teachers always asked the same question to me and my classmates. What do you want to be when you grow up? Sadly, I had no answer. What should I have told them? That I'll be a sacrifice to some god my parents believed in. I mean, I probably even believed in this supreme god. After all, I was raised like this. I had no idea who was right, my parents or our religion teacher. Years went by living like this, and as the years went by, my 15th birthday came closer and closer. I remember talking with a friend the day before my birthday. I tried to say goodbye, knowing that I'd be dead by next week, and I still didn't understand why. During this conversation, my friend told me that I must be joking. When I finally told him that I'd be sacrificed, he laughed at me. It took a minute for him to realize that I wasn't joking. "What?" he said. "I was born to be sacrificed to this god. They have told me since I was a little kid," I responded. His face was confused. "Mate, your parents are crazy. That's not normal. I mean, what the heck, dude? Call the police, don't be stupid." "No, you don't understand. That's the only reason I exist." "Mate, I'm telling this to my parents tomorrow when they get home. That's just crazy," he argued. I begged him not to do it because I would get in trouble. Man, was I a stupid kid. The following day was a Saturday. It was my birthday. I woke up and spent the first half of the day learning in my room after I had breakfast. It was around lunchtime when I saw cars stopping at our house from the window. I counted at least 21 people arriving and coming inside. They probably went to the basement as usual, but I had no idea what to do. I was afraid. Is it my last day on Earth? I asked myself. I just couldn't believe they would kill me. I hadn't done anything wrong. I remembered the previous day and what my friend had told me. He was right. This was crazy. They're crazy. And I shouldn't let them kill me because they're just crazy. I tried to open my door, but as usual, it was locked. I panicked and kicked the door, hoping they wouldn't hear it as they were in the basement. The door stood still. It had an old lock, so I thought it wouldn't be that hard to open it with force. Well, was I wrong. I kicked it again and again. My leg hurt like heck when the lock finally surrendered and the door opened. I couldn't believe that I could just finally leave the darned house. I slowly walked down the stairs, trying not to make any sound. Also because I couldn't stand correctly on my left leg because of that stupid door. I reached the kitchen and tried to open the door to escape the house, but it was also locked. It was the only door leading outside. I looked to my left, where the door with the black window was. I still hadn't set foot inside. Maybe there was a way to escape from in there, I thought. I went to open it. I hoped that I could find the keys or something that could help me get out of the house. As I opened the door, I froze. Since I was born, I wasn't allowed to go inside that room. And this was the reason. The room was large. It was probably the biggest room in the entire house, and in the corner, I still have no idea what was there that day. It was a terrifying creature. Its skin was glowing in red and gray. It was crawling on at least 5 legs, and had a horrifying face resembling a human with long brown hair. It screamed at me. I slammed the door shut and tried to run somewhere, but my family also heard the scream from the basement, and they came running upstairs. "We told you not to go in there," my mother shouted at me. "But it doesn't matter anymore. You'll be sacrificed today, as it was said in the prophecy." Before I could do anything, my father grabbed my arm and dragged me down into the basement. When we reached it, I could see dozens of people who had arrived earlier that day. The basement was designed like some kind of ritual place. I saw an altar and lots of strange symbols unknown to me. My father pushed me on top of a table and tied me down with a rope. I screamed, but nobody cared. They started chanting, rhythmic nonsense. There's no other way to describe it. My father grabbed an old knife, or rather, a dagger. I screamed even harder, then heard something from upstairs. Everyone looked up as armed police forces rushed down the stairs. "Everyone hands up!" they shouted. It was so surreal. I can't even remember what happened afterward. I remember a few days later when they told me that my parents were in prison, and that I'd be placed in a school in another state. They also told me that I'd be going to live with a foster family until they were able to finish the investigation. I still don't know if they found that thing in the room with the black door. I spent the next few years constantly talking with a psychologist. I want to find out what happened at my old house. I want to know what that creature was that lived there, and I want to know who was the god my parents believed in. I'll find out one day, hopefully.